Hey guys, Eli here from Nintendo Network 64. As many of you guys just did, I just came away from the Nintendo Digital presentation for E3, and I wanted to provide a review on my thoughts on the presentation. Now, as many of you also thought, I think Nintendo rocked the E3 presentation this year, easily beating out pretty much all the other companies. Now, the reason for this is that Nintendo came to achieve its goal. The goal is to announce a few new games and pretty much sell the Switch, which is exactly what its 25-minute presentation did. Now, its formatting and pacing was spectacular, as opposed to Sony. Now, if you remember last night, Sony, they didn't do a great job at that. The first half an hour of the conference was pretty much DLC, VR games, and a remake, okay? So that wasn't new games, it wasn't updates to their big games, it was half an hour of stuff that their dedicated base is going to care about, especially those that have played all their first-party titles, but those that are looking to buy a PS4, or those that just maybe don't care about the first-party games, their first-party games in that such depth, maybe might not care about as much. Nintendo did the opposite. They only had two of those types of announcements. They had the Rocket League announcement, which, by the way, Rocket League is a massive game. It's got millions of daily players. The fact that it works cross-platform means that if I played, I can play with my friends on Switch. They don't necessarily need my friends on Steam. They don't necessarily have to buy a Switch, which is definitely another selling point for those thinking that they want to play games with their friends. So it's this massive game, even though an indie one, but one with massive popularity. Also, streaming is huge on it, so it's free advertisement right there. And then the other thing being the Zelda DLC. Zelda being their biggest game, they gotta remind people that it's out there, and, you know, you gotta throw a bone to the fans. So you had these two announcements that were slightly less as big as the other announcements, but still there. But they were spread throughout the conference. They didn't kick it off with those announcements for the first half hour, okay? The whole presentation was 25 minutes in total. Then, the second type of game they showed were updates on those that are coming out in 2017. There were three of those. You had Xenoblade, which is a massive game people really care about, really highly regarded, and we're looking for an update. Then you had Super Mario Odyssey, which is arguably their biggest game of the year other than Zelda and Mario Kart. So it's something that people really care about and are looking for an update on. And then Fire Emblem Warriors, which isn't as big of a deal, but, you know, they still have to release a trailer on it, and it makes sense, whatever. But you had those spaced out. And then the other thing you had spaced through were the big newly announced games, which were Kirby, Pokemon, Metroid, and Yoshi. Now, you had trailers for Yoshi and Kirby, which is important because those look like spring games, and they're kind of showing people these new titles, which obviously are something we're looking for, but also we see a little bit about them, which is why the trailers are there. The two other titles being Metroid and Pokemon, we saw nothing on. That's fine. That's totally okay because it gets you excited. That's what E3's purpose is. It's to get people excited, to make those new announcements so that people are freaking out about your console. Now, some people might say, well, you're announcing too early, these games are way far off, Pokemon's over a year out, Metroid, who knows, might be a 2020 game for all we know. That's fine. That's a problem for another year. By that time, Nintendo's going to have other games in development, other things to announce. The point is that this year you had the hype, you had the announcements on one of the critical rollout years of their new console, which is the fact that this year they need to sell as many Switch units as possible to rectify their image, to make sure it's intact and coherent for the stockholders, for other gamers, for third-party publishers who are looking to see whether the Switch is a viable platform to release games on. So it's important to get those announcements out of the way, though, so that people are excited regardless of how far out they are. So even the splash screen is enough to get the excitement out. Now, Nintendo's pacing was perfect. What you had is these announcements were equidistant from each other. They're spaced out, and it was really this roll of oh, here's something of something you're familiar on. Pokemon being the other one, that's a remake. So that's also, I would say, a little bit of a lower tier because it is a remake. So you had these lower tier announcements, which are still important, and then you had these big games that we're getting announcements on coming later this year, and then you had these massive behemoths that are announced for next year or the year after that. To get people excited for the future of this console. And so in that way, I think the presentation was perfectly cognizant of the goal of why Nintendo came to E3 this year. There are a little bit of concerns I have on the conference. I think that it's pretty clear that Nintendo's third-party support, as of right now, is severely lacking. I mean, other than FIFA, the Ubi-developed title, which I'm not going to count because that's an exclusive, and that other Ubi developed the fighter game, you know, you don't have a lot of third-party support here. It is concerning. It's looking at this moment like Switch might have worse third-party support than the Wii U, which is saying quite a bit. I don't think it's required. I don't think they necessarily need it. It would have bloated out their conference if they do, by any chance, have something we don't know about in third-party wise. So I don't think it's required, but it does raise some red flags about how much there is to the system if you're not necessarily, a Nintendo gamer, if you're not looking for the first-party software. It doesn't look like the Switch is going to be for you at this moment. The other concern was on the indie side, which is related to third-party games. But in previous years, we had a big indie presence. We had reels, we had developers coming on stage, in all sorts of variations of ways. Over the last few years, Nintendo's been highlighting their indie developers. That didn't happen this year. I mean, we still might see that at Treehouse, which I'm hoping for. But the sort of thing where Rumbo would come out and Mighty Gunvolt, and Thomas Happ's game, Axiom Verge. We don't have that this year. So it is a little bit concerning on that end too. Now I get why. I'm fine with the conference the way it is. 25 minutes of, wall-to-wall huge announcements that get people excited. That's fine. That's what your E3 needs to be. But I hope that Nintendo puts out a few announcements either over the next few days or weeks or months, whatever, to alleviate my fears about the fact that is this really just going to be a console where we get a game for a month? Like, is that what it's going to be? Because I surely hope not. So, once again, best presentation, I think, out of any of the consoles. Even the third parties, of course, as well. But I would like to see a little bit more about the third-party end. Alright, what do you think about their conference? Let me know what you thought, whether you liked it. Maybe you didn't like it as much as I did. Let us know in the comments below. Also, please don't forget to like and subscribe if you liked the video. If not, let me know why.